set myself up here. So thanks for having me participate. This is exciting to see. Huge outcome, participation relative to last year, and I'm glad to be part of it. I've been an entrepreneur for about 25 years. I'm a computer scientist by training, and as the person who introduced me explained, I now run a green data center company that integrates data center technology with renewable energy power plants. Now, in addition to that, I'm very passionate about Bitcoin. I can talk about the elegant design of Bitcoin and the advancements in distributed computing that Bitcoin is realizing to do what it does. I can talk about the role it plays in economic freedom. And I can talk about how it's an interesting approach to strong money. But I am not, sadly, going to do that. What I am going to talk about is something that I believe is more powerful, and its relationship to Bitcoin is something that we should all be thinking about. And what I want to talk about is something we call convergence. So I want to talk about convergence, and the one thing I want you to understand is no matter what you remember in my presentation today, I want you to leave with that word burned into your brain. And I want you to look at policy with the lens of convergence, and I want you to look at Bitcoin with the lens of convergence. So what is convergence, if I'm wanting you to focus on it so much? Convergence is the concept of essentially merging two technologies to transform how we solve the world's problems. And the funny thing is that we live experiencing convergence all the time. But to give you a sense of what it is and why it's important, I want to share with you the first time that I personally was exposed to it. I started my career about 25 years ago at Intel. At the time, Intel was the world's leader in chip technology and was really helping to shape the future of the personal computer industry. In fact, I owe most of my professional growth and development to that company. And at the time, Andy Grove was the CEO of the company, and he is most famous for a talk that he gave at one of the annual PC conferences, Comdex. It was somewhere in the 90s time frame, and he was trumpeting a program that he was developing at Intel called Intel ProShare. ProShare was based on the concept or an insight that he had, and a lot of members at Intel at the time, including myself, was that the personal computer was more than a productivity tool. At least it can become more than just a productivity tool. In the talk, if you look at the keynote speech, you can actually go out there and find it. I was surprised that I could find it, but the internet, you can pretty much find anything these days. And in the talk, what he said is, we started the personal computer industry with two very simple applications: the spreadsheet on the one hand and a word processor, and we're all familiar with those technologies. But today's connected PC, remember, this is mid to late 90s, we don't have devices in our pockets everywhere, and he's talking about the connected PC and the communication applications that would exist on the PC platform would allow users to reach through their PCs through time and space to connect to other people on the planet. And obviously he got lots of applause because, Andy Grove was a god at the time. And in fact, at some point he became Mr. Time Person of the Year. But what's interesting is that he was talking about an evolution in PC technology, and what he talked about was in order to accomplish that, he would need to combine and bring new capabilities together that you didn't really think of before. And, technologies merging to create this future. So that was based on the concept that there were two what seemed like separate ideas or separate technologies that were going through an evolution on their own. By integrating them, we can do something completely different. So the PC needs to be more than just simple tools, for example. And telecom, which was sort of flattening out as an industry, it had just come out of deregulation, and it was really focused on what else can we do with this platform? Can we do more than just audio with this platform? And the convergence that ultimately ensued by combining those two things on the PC platform set the stage for just about everything we've seen over the last 2 decades as it relates to computing. If you look at communication platforms today, it's kind of funny to say that you use a PC to communicate with other people. It's like, what are you talking about, John? I live on Zoom. Well, I live on Zoom. I don't know anybody else. Okay, so people use Microsoft. What is it called? Teams. Thank you. I couldn't remember what it was. I hate Teams. Anyway, so the key thing is that we live in that environment today, but it is the direct result of convergence. So let's talk about convergence. What exactly is convergence? Convergence is a purposeful integration of technology. When you look at this history, I was fortunate to be in an environment where you were getting paid to see the future, and it has helped me to sort of look at the world through the convergence lens from then on. And so we've all seen convergence. You guys, certainly understood Teams and Zoom. What other examples of convergence that are out there? Any audience members care to opine on other convergence that we've experienced in the last 2 decades? Just shout it out. I won't be mad. Say again? Retail sales and the internet. There you go. Convergence. Online gaming. Convergence. Just keep going. We've seen a lot of them. Convergence. Biotechnology. Biology and computing. Convergence. The iPhone. Mobile and the internet, or content in the internet. Convergence. Social media. User-generated content combined with social networks and social graphs. Convergence. I can keep going. There's something called the blockchain. You ever heard of that? That's convergence. It's a combination of distributed computing or peer-to-peer computing with cryptology. That's convergence. You see, convergence is everywhere, but sometimes we don't see it when it's happening right in front of us and sets the stage for the future and policy opportunities. So I want to talk now about a new form of convergence that's taking place that's even bigger than some of the ones that we've just touched on. And it starts with a little secret in the renewable energy space. It turns out that renewable energy is the fastest growing technology and development in the world right now. All forms of it are growing. No matter what form of energy that you're looking at, it's on a growth path. And the reason for that is that over the last several years, there have been significant advancements in scale of that technology. It is benefiting from something known as Wright's Law, which is the basic concept that the more you do stuff, the better you get at it, the cheaper it gets, and you can do more of it, okay? Computing has benefited from that, also known as Moore's Law, a corollary, if you will, to Wright's Law. And since the pandemic, we've seen a huge reimagining of energy and its role in the globe, and that has sort of had the entire world sort of jump into a back of a Tesla, zooming into the future where the entire world is renewable powered. And since then, the last few years, we've seen policy also act as an accelerant. The IRA is a powerful accelerant to the growth of renewables. But here's the problem. Most of that power that gets built and generated never makes it to the grid. It never gets there. The electrons never find their way to power a home. They actually get wasted. About 30 to 40% of a typical power plant never actually produces all the power that they can produce. And a lot of that is driven by the design of the grid. The grid was designed to be a synchronous system that is designed to deliver energy precisely tuned to the load or use of that energy. And so as these power plants come online, a large amount of their power is wasted because of that. And I just want to understand something for a second. I'm doing a lot of audience participation. How many people knew that? All right. So now we know how all the DOE people are sitting. No, I'm just kidding. Now, this mismatch is what is causing this issue. And when I'm at cocktail parties and I tell people what I do, I'm helping this wasted energy problem. They're like, John, aren't there solutions to this already? Can't you just store the energy? Yes, there are solutions, but they have challenges. Batteries are not scalable enough. And transmission lines, so moving the energy, if the wind is blowing at night in Oklahoma, you might want to put it on a power line and send it to Atlanta, where everybody's dancing at one of my favorite clubs. But we're not going to get there. But those things don't really work so well because power lines take a very long time, and they really need sort of a fast lane, if you will, to make that happen. So that's one thing that's happening, right? So going back to my convergence slide, on the one hand is energy needs more ways to use its power. On the other hand, there's something called Bitcoin. I don't know if you folks have heard of it. About 16 years ago, it was worth nothing, depending on who you ask. Some guy bought a pizza with it, irrelevant. But today, it's worth about $70,000 per Bitcoin. And that growth in value, interestingly enough, is happening right at the same time as Bitcoin is being integrated with the traditional financial system, Convergence. Now, take a look at that for a second. That's an interesting phenomenon. In that short period, you've created a new technology that has sparked people's imagination, people's curiosity. It's also raised some concerns from folks. And at the same time, it's created an economic driver for a whole new industry called the Bitcoin mining industry. Today, 50 megawatts of a Bitcoin mining facility, so a very sizable facility, can generate about 73 BTC per month. That works out to about $5 million, if I did my math right, per month. And this makes it incredibly lucrative to get into the digital asset mining space. So think gold mining, digital asset mining. And it also makes massive amounts of, it also plays a massive role in the Bitcoin network because that mining process is a security system. It is designed to protect that value that has accumulated over those almost 2 decades. And that security is programmatically architected to connect to energy or relate to energy. In fact, it needs energy in order to succeed. And so, in other words, Bitcoin's relationship with energy, which is coded into the technology itself, is a feature, not a bug. It was done on purpose. And its purpose is to ensure that there's economic interest in protecting the digital asset. Okay, now, much like renewable energy, Bitcoin has some challenges. It needs a lot of that energy, and sometimes when it's done, it can create challenges for the carbon footprint of the industry. It can create challenges for the carbon footprint of the planet. And so we have to be a little careful as we grow that industry not to move us in the wrong direction from a climate perspective. So I've talked about 2 things: renewable energy growing at a really fast pace, and it has a challenge. It could be more. Bitcoin growing and maturing at an accelerating pace, but it has a challenge around carbon. It needs more energy, and it needs that energy to be more sustainable. That, my friends, is a convergence opportunity. So what if we could put these things together and develop a solution that can actually have real implications for the United States and for the rest of the world? We have a name for this. At Soluna, we call it renewable computing. It is a direct example of convergence, and in fact, it is one of the biggest opportunities that we're not focused on right now that we should be. So let me show you how this works and why I think that is true. This is Project Dorothy. Isn't she beautiful? I'm very proud of her. She's named after Dorothy Vaughan, who is the incredible scientist and human computer that helped us get to the moon for the first time. She is based in the northwestern part of Texas, and she sits right next to a 150 megawatt wind farm. And that wind farm has had immeasurable challenges since it was built. By the way, about 1 megawatt of power from that wind farm can power 1,000 homes, to give you a sense of scale. So this is a utility scale facility, so 150,000 homes can be powered by that facility. But here's the thing. Over the course of its life, this is just a view of the last 4 years of its life. In fact, it was commissioned in 2016. When it first started, most of its energy went to the grid and powered load throughout Texas. In the ensuing 4 years, its curtailment levels, which is a fancy way of saying wasted energy, grew substantially. And on the left, you can see the blue is the wind farm's production. That's what it produces from a percentage of 100% production, let's say. But what I want you to focus on is the right side, which I think is your right side, bars, and that's that curtailment bar. As you can see, you're somewhere hovering around that 30 to 40% number I was talking about. That's a lot of power. 30 to 40% of 150,000 homes is one way to look at it, or 150 megawatts is considerable. So what we did is we built that data center to help them solve this challenge. And by the way, that wind farm loses millions of dollars a year from that wasted energy. It loses tax credits that it would otherwise get because it's not able to sell that power. And it doesn't enjoy the renewable energy credits that come from that project. So there's multiple layers of economic challenges that are created when a power plant that has hundreds of millions of dollars invested in it does not generate revenue for every electron it produces. So this slide here, you can see that Dorothy, that 50 megawatt facility, excuse me.
Does curtailed mean that it's not put into the grid, or windmills are turned off?
Very good question. I love questions. Curtailed in energy parlance means that the power plant could produce the energy, but it is not able to, either for technical reasons. So the grid says, I have no room for your electrons. I need you to turn off half of your facility. Or economic reasons. I have too much of this energy coming at me. I just can't use all of it. So I'm going to send you a signal that says, do what you want, but if you send me power, you're going to pay to do that. Otherwise, just turn off enough of your plant to reach this level. So yes, it can produce the power, but it is not able to for reasons outside of its control. So we use about 50% of that curtailed footprint right now. So a 50 megawatt facility that we built mines Bitcoin and solves a major issue for this power plant. And to give you a sense, so each of the white portion shows you what percentage of the curtailment we're consuming. And when you look at the role that the data center is now playing relative to the power plant, and zoom out, you start to see an interesting relationship, and you start to see some interesting things happening. On the one hand, we are mining Bitcoin. We're mining, as I said, about 73 Bitcoin. Actually, our customers are, so we provide our data center to customers that are doing mining. And we're doing that on a monthly basis across the stage of the year. And what's interesting about Dorothy is because of where she's located, where that data center is built, the power that she's using, and the fact that the data center is a flexible system. It can grow or shrink depending on how much power is available. It is 20% greener or less carbon intensive than a traditional data center. These are the data centers that are streaming information to your phones right now. You scroll through a host of content. Well, this facility is 20% greener than that. Imagine you put one of those data centers here. If you compare this facility to a traditional Bitcoin mining facility that's not located at this power plant, it's 40% greener. So just by a simple idea, convergence, we've now done something completely different and opened up the door to something new. Let's talk about the grid, what the grid gets out of this. Well, you know that, that 30 to 40% that's being wasted, we're monetizing it. That's fine. But what if the grid needs it at this particular time? There's a weather event. There's a peak demand that's happening in a hot summer or a cold winter. And in that location, they need the power from that power plant now. So this facility can actually ramp down its use of that energy, curtail itself, and allow that energy to go back to the grid and provide that as a service to the grid. Think of it as an insurance policy or a standby system. Or another way to think about it is it's a digital battery. We're finding a way to sync the power when it can't be monetized and then release it when it needs to be used in the environment. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the wind farm. We now essentially produce about $5 million per year for that wind farm in terms of energy sales, tax credits that are being re-energized, if you will, and the renewable energy tax credits, and a host of other things, actually, that are more complex for the room. We can talk on the side, but it actually unlocks a lot more economic potential for that wind farm. But the key thing is that we have done something by bringing a technology to that location that brings more economics to a resource that we need in this country desperately, and we need it around the world desperately. That is known as additionality, another technical term in the renewable energy space, when if it were not for our data center being there, that block of renewable energy would never have come to life, if you will. When you drive by that power plant, you literally see turbines turned off. Energy is not being produced, okay? So we're basically doing something that unlocks that potential simply by doing something we've done many, many times, convergence. Okay, so let's talk about the virtuous cycle that this creates. So we're now mining Bitcoin more sustainably, something we need desperately in the industry. It catalyzes renewable energy, as I just talked about, because now more economics comes into the industry. That's convergence, right? Renewable computing. And it allows us to think about Bitcoin differently, right? It's catalyzing renewables, it's stabilizing the grid, and it's basically driving more economic growth in that location. If you drive to where this power plant is located and where this data center is located, you will see lots and lots and lots of open land, and you will see lots of cows. Okay, there's some people there too, but the people are enjoying the economic development that's happening by bringing this technology here. We're creating an industry where this industry would otherwise not have gone. So that's another advantage of renewable computing, is you're taking industries that on the surface today only look like they can only be done in Virginia or places where there's big internet backbone. That's not true. You can actually bring more computing to these locations, which opens up an opportunity to rethink convergence in this talk beyond Bitcoin. So this isn't just about Bitcoin. There's lots of other technologies and computing that's underway out there. In fact, there's so much of it that about 20% of this sector of computing will represent more energy consumption than all of the other sources combined by 2030. Think about that for a second. We talk a lot about how much energy Bitcoin uses, but computing is unstoppable in its need for energy and the growth of that market. And that is happening as we speak. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin or the convergence, but it's actually just evolving because of Moore's law and Wright's law and underway. So it's not just about Bitcoin. You can create that same virtuous cycle, if you will, if you had a computing capability like AI in this location. If Dorothy was an AI facility, then if you widen out that aperture, you start to see that any kind of intensive computing can be done here. And the cycle is exactly the same. The intensive computing drives sustainability, drives the market. I'm going to check my time here. Am I over? Okay. I'm going to wrap here. So if you got the point, we have renewable energy that's continuing to evolve and is essentially setting the stage for not just this one plant that I talked about in Texas, but lots of plants around the country. It just keeps happening. It's not just new ones, it's existing ones. You can imagine thousands of these things combined, creating what we believe to be the future of renewables, which is computing. And the opportunity for everyone in here who is in the policy space, it's really an opportunity for you to rethink the role of Bitcoin and look at it really as a renewable energy resource or renewable energy catalyzer. And policy that drives that and other compute can have a significant capability to drive more convergence. Thank you. Sorry I went over.